Well, a busy opening day morning on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We're always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. The Royals getting set to take on the Cleveland Guardians this afternoon after, of course, a run of the postseason last year, but still a lot of questions on what this team's future is and specifically where this team's future is come the early 2030s. The mayor of Kansas City, Quinton Lucas, is here on KCMO Talk Radio. And I was out of town the last few days, and my competition decided to blow themselves up and destroy their own credibility, which I'm totally fine with. I mean, it's really A-OK by me. Usually it's not good when I take some time off. It gives the competition an opportunity. And in this case, I mean, they just shot themselves right in the foot. So, Mr. Mayor, what would you say to those in this business that I'm in that decided to push the idea that the Royals to 119th and Null seemed to be a done deal?
You know, I think I've been saying it for a long time on your show. There are some who want to play in Rumorville and have every kind of thing and claim out there. I think this is going to be responsibly done. There are conversations that are ongoing. Good people are actually doing the real details. Anyone who is actually serious about what they're doing isn't leaking every 2 days, isn't saying that this is a done deal, because they know the real story is when there's a big press conference, everybody comes together, we have the event, that's when you'll actually know. And so you try to share as much as you can, but a lot of this, and particularly it was this 119th and Null type thing, and I don't know if it was developers or lobbyists or others or just radio shock jocks that wanted to kind of be first in, who were saying not just that it's likely to happen, but almost declaring it's a done deal, lambasting the Kansas City group and delegation. And, you know, it is what it is, but I'm glad at least we've gotten to a bit more sanity. And it was hilarious. Rare in life do you get to see someone say something at 8 o'clock that then is debunked entirely by noon that very day. So it was, you know, intriguing to say the least.
Yeah, that's certainly hard to do and hard to pull off. So let me ask you then, you obviously shared with Channel 41 yesterday that the city has offered more than $1 billion to the Royals to help them build the new stadium downtown or renovate Kauffman Stadium. You say that there's no tax increase here with this, so how do you get to $1 billion worth of incentives?
Very simply, right? It's largely what the Star Bond tool is. And by the way, I'm not trying to confuse anybody. Everybody thinks this is magical. Some people describe Star Bonds as something that has never been thought of. It is very simply sales tax redirections. So every sales tax dollar that is earned on a project going right back to fund the debt on the project. The Star Bonds are a sales tax, or get the A, right, kind of revenue bond type of thing. And that's the exact same thing that we're looking at in Kansas City and the state of Missouri. First of all, we already have that local thing. It's largely what you call a TIF, tax increment financing, or Port Authority type thing. The difference in the way that you cover that difference, and the reason there is state legislation in Missouri, which, yeah, it needs the Royals to kind of help it activate. But the reason you have that is because that would allow the state sales tax redirection. That's how you start to get into those higher figures. And so, indeed, it is not something that says we need a different either local sales tax or we need to divert some parks tax or something like that. Instead, it's saying we would just look to redirect revenues from the development itself and the stadium into funding the project long term. We're trying to build out numbers that suggest it could last that long. That's largely what we have laid out in front of the Royals. We look forward to active and robust discussions. Those continue. I'm never going to go in depth on them because I think when you're having a good business conversation, you need to have that confidence. But at the same time, certainly I think the public needs to be aware that those chats are ongoing.
So is this a to use the Star Bond terminology that's gotten so much attention, are you essentially drawing a district where you say the additive sales tax revenues would go back to pay off the debt? Would you draw a district like a Star Bond district, or would you just say this stadium, this physical building, and any adjacent buildings that the team wants to build, those added sales tax revenues would go back to the debt? Or would you extend it beyond any new buildings?
Yeah, you would. So first of all, you're exactly right. You would draw a district, and you would have certain things included in the district. Obviously, any new development tied to the stadium would be an important part of it. If you're putting existing development in the stadium, then that's a conversation. An example would be, let's say if you're building something near Crown Center, Do you include them in some way? Do you not? What are the rationales and the policy viewpoints of it? But that's really what you do. The reason you don't want to necessarily draw in existing districts is because those tax revenues go to support the city right now. They go to do a bunch of other things. And so you really would want to base it just on new revenue. But that's the sort of thing that we're talking about. There's also a Missouri versus Kansas difference in who owns the stadium and, of course, then who holds that debt. In Missouri, often these are publicly held entities, so it's Jackson County-owned stadiums right now where you are, right? This would likely be a Kansas City facility. What does that look like? There are real details to think about because there are debt obligations that run with it and beyond. But I think that is the work that's being done, and I think, frankly, it's more likely to get accomplished than a lot of people, including up and down the radio dial, tend to think.
Mayor Lucas is here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. We are always streaming on the KCMO app. So what is the state's role in this offer that you have put together then?
I think the states, in fact, I actually would suggest the Royals have an important and intermediate role. I have great respect for Governor Kehoe, Speaker John Patterson, who's from Lee's Summit, a Republican leader in the House, so many others who are there. I think what they have made clear is we want to know more from the Royals. And so there is state legislation that can support funding this stadium, taking this approach. I think it is very well written. It has a Republican sponsor, a Democratic sponsor. And I don't think it's DOA in the legislature. What I think I've heard from the legislature is to say, all right, this is interesting. It could be a great tool. We need to hear the team's commitment. At a time when there is a budget challenge at local, state, and federal levels, at a time when people are looking into government efficiency and responsibility, redirecting taxes from this stadium to go back into the stadium, that makes sense. The project pays for itself. But we need to make sure that that's something that's going to be valuable for the people of Missouri long term. And I think the first step is hearing from the Royals and perhaps the Chiefs, this is something that we want. And so I think that and where they are is going to be an important part of that. That's something that we continue to build out. I know the teams have had a chance to visit with our new governor, both of them. And I look forward to learning more over the days ahead. But in many ways, I would say I think we've laid out a good package that, frankly, beats what they can see on the other side of the state line or in other jurisdictions around Missouri. And I think the ball is indeed in their court, but we'll keep working with them to make sure we can finesse any details.
Location-wise, John Sherman held a press conference yesterday, seemed to make it pretty clear the future of this team cannot be here at Kauffman Stadium. I know that your offer would include staying at Kauffman Stadium. So if that is something the team seems adamant that they have to move on, is there a location, Washington Square Park, reviving the Crossroads, East Village, that you say to yourself, from a city leadership perspective, this is what we think makes the most sense?
I would say this. I think from a city leadership perspective, keeping one of the teams at the Truman Sports Complex I find to be very important. It is, of course, a large tranche of land. It is in the center of Jackson County, actually. I think in some ways it's more important to Independence, Raytown, Lee Summit, Blue Springs, and others that we don't have a giant donut hole in the middle of the city or in our county. And so I think keeping a team there is important. I agree with many that a lot of that conversation has been around the Chiefs, where they look to build new or to stay at Arrowhead and just improve there. I do think that when you're starting to talk about the types of dollars that we're going to spend, then downtown is pretty exclusively the only place that makes a lot of sense. I respect every part of the region. I get around the region. My wife kind of claims to be from Kansas, although she lived a few places growing up. I mean, I got no real beefs against anywhere else. It's just, where do you get the public transit? Where do you have the hotels built in? Where can you get the convention and conference traffic that you would want for that sort of amenity? All of that ends up being downtown Kansas City. It makes the most sense. Structured parking, all of the things that are already there. And by the way, and I know a lot of people listening will say, but where do you park and what about the traffic? Downtown was built, whether you believe it or not, to have about 100,000 people coming in every day and out every day. It's why there's a Southwest Trafficway. It's why there are all those interstates. It's why you have one-way roads. All of those things are actually meant to get people efficiently in and out. So I still think that makes the most sense. I think it can have the most additive benefit for everything else we've invested in Kansas City, and that's where I think ultimately the Royals will go.
Mayor Lucas on KCMO. I do want to ask you, Mr. Mayor, while we have a few minutes left with you, where do you stand right now on the future of City Manager Brian Platt?
You know, on Manager Platt, I'm not going to get ahead of the City Council. We meet today at 9 o'clock. I've seen a mini press tour from him in the last 24 hours. I was thinking about the late Queen Elizabeth, who said something to the effect of, while recollections may vary, Harry and Meghan will always be part of the family. I think in this situation, Brian certainly is getting his perspective out there. There are many things with which I disagree and for which I have record evidence that suggests his views aren't accurate. But that being said, I just will try to ensure that I do what I'm hired to do, which is what's best for the people of Kansas City long term. You don't pay us to navel gaze. You don't pay us to be overwhelmingly introspective and to be in a world of palace intrigue. Everybody expects us to get things done and to build the best workplace for all of our employees. The choice we make is going to be consistent with that.
Mr. Mayor, there was also an email that has now been floated out there from Councilwoman Melissa Robinson, dated back to October of 2020, where she expressed a disappointment that the city did not hire a black female city manager and instead chose a white male, which she called unconscionable. You look back on that time, you were an advocate for Brian Platt, so obviously that was not a sentiment that you agreed with. But how concerning is it that you have people, literally lobbying for folks for jobs based on their skin color and their gender in this city?
Full stop, that people should be hired based on their talent. I always believe in having as expansive a pool as possible. To me, what affirmative action really means is actually saying, hey, let me make sure I go to every place. I go to an HBCU. I go to North Jersey. I go to everywhere to see how I can find the best people. What it does not mean is to say that if I have a talented candidate who's looking at me, that I'm going to dismiss them in some way because of their race. I believe we made a hire of the best candidate after lots of interviews, after a lot of people, after consultants. And so I disagree with the councilwoman's premise that in some way the others are more qualified. If they're more qualified, if they were better candidates, they would have won. Full stop. I have now hired, if I count acting people, I have hired a black acting police chief, a black city manager, a black acting city manager, a white female police chief. I'm proud of the choices we made. And in each situation, I think we got the best person. And that's what I'm always going to be committed to, and that's what Kansas City's committed to. And so, I disagree with any rhetoric that says otherwise.
All right, you coming out to the game today? I assume that you will be here on opening day. And what are you thinking for the upcoming season here for the Royals?
Pete, I was trying to take the whole day off, but, as luck would have it, sometimes that's not how life shakes out. I will be there. I've been going to opening day not since I was a kid, but since I was a young adult in Kansas City. When I got old enough and had some money, I started coming out. It's been fun to be out. I'll be there with lots of fans, and I look forward to having another great season for the Royals. They finished strong against the Yankees last year. Looking forward to more. Bobby Witt Jr. and others. I was at spring training a few weeks ago. Had a blast. So I'm excited for the boys in blue to be back.
Well, if you want to come back, we have majority owner John Sherman on at 9 o'clock, so we can just hash out this whole deal here coming up in about an hour and 10 minutes if you want to get an early start on the day out this way.
Highest ratings ever if I just put that on social media now, and maybe I'd get another radio station that say the deal is now done and locked up. But I don't know if we'll do that on radio, but we'll make sure we keep you updated.
Well, the ratings, I don't know if they can get much higher, but they're already pretty darn high, and our competition keeps helping us by burying themselves. So I do appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the time and the offer, and we will talk to you next week. Enjoy your time out at the game.
Yep, go Royals, and have a great weekend, everybody.
Okay, that is Quinton Lucas, the mayor of Kansas City, on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM.